That's the Masechta gets its own artwork. Okay, the schus of our learning should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. Should be a Shleima for Yechiel Nassim ben Sarah and Aaron David Halevi ben Menucha Adel Esther. So we're going to start Vav Amud Beis on the bottom. Boilahu. Yeah, we had some interesting questions about Baltacher. We had two questions so far from Reb Zera. Baltacher means you can't delay bringing the sacrifice. And we said basically, we had 5 different opinions, but basically it was 3 holidays. You can't delay it. First question was, what about someone that inherits? Does he violate Baltacher based on his own counting, or is it on the counting of when his father was supposed to bring it? Second question was, what about a woman? She chayv in Baltach. She doesn't have to come to the Beis Hamikdash. He said, well, she has simcha. Now the Gemara has a question. 3 lines from the bottom on 6b. B'char. The brisa that we quoted before was that you have, whether it's a b'char, whether it's a sacrifice, once a year passes without 3 holidays, which we had to figure out how it's possible to have a year without 3 holidays, or 3 holidays without a year, is a violation. So we're asking, when do we start counting the year for the b'char? You know, the animal is born, it's a firstborn animal, it's brought as a sacrifice. You can't bring it in the first, you have to wait 8 days until you can bring it. You can't bring it right away. So do you start counting from its birth? Or do you start counting from when you're able to bring it as a year of offering time? It's a question of a week. Abaya says that the year starts from when it's born. Ravacha bar Yaakov amar mishash nira l'artza. Ravacha bar Yaakov says when it's able to be brought as a sacrifice. It's a funny expression because hartzah. The Gemara 1 page before said, "B'chor lav bar hartzahu." Kachim is banei hartzah. It depends what it's relative to what. Because it's not, hartzah means like an appeasement. It's not brought for a sin, but it means when it's able to be brought as a sacrifice. So Ravacha bar Yaakov says that the year starts when it's 8 days old. Gemara says, it's not a machlekes. Abai and Ravacha bar Yaakov had this thing. I forget if it was Ravacha bar Yaakov or Reb Yaakov. Gemara Kedushin has that Abai felt that he was a tzaddik, and he put him to kill the demon. Remember that? Those are Ravacha bar Yaakov. He put him in no one should invite him in to the house, and there was a demon in the shul, and Ravacha bar Yaakov davened. It was either Ravacha bar Yaakov or Reb Yaakov Baracha. It's either him or his father. Every time he bowed, one head of the demon fell off. Okay, anyway, so they're not arguing. Habatam, hababal mum. Depends. You see, question is, if it's a tam, it's brought as a sacrifice. So we understand you have a year to bring it. If it's a balmum, then what's the story with the year? You don't have to, it's not a sacrifice. Yeah, the Kayan eats it. Maybe it means that you have to give it to the Kayan. It's not in the Kayan's possession. But you have to give it to the Kayan within the year. What would that have to do with its... Oh, So that we would explain like this: if it's a balmum, then the kohen could have eaten it from the first day. So the year starts from when he's able to eat it, right? If it's a karban, then the year starts from when you're able to offer it. So that's, Gemara asks, 1 second. Balmum, you can't eat it right away either. Why? Because you always have to wait. There's a brisa in Masechta Shabbos that says, in the name of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, that in order to find out if a person is going to survive, if a child is going to survive, you have to wait 30 days. And for an animal, you have to wait 8 days. So, which would mean that if you shech the animal before 8 days, the shechita doesn't really help, because it could have been that animal was really a nefel. So you always have to wait 8 days. You can't really shech it on the day. So what are you telling me, that you really have a year if it's not a sacrifice? Even if it's not a sacrifice, you can't slaughter the animal immediately. The ben pekua is different. You slaughter the mother and then you eat the animal. My answer is the kimle beishakolei chadasha. This is not always accurate, that you have to wait 8 days before you slaughter an animal. That's only if you're not sure if it's a full-term birth. If it's a full term, then you don't have to wait. If it's not a full term, then you don't know if it's going to survive. Then you have to wait 8 days. So here we're talking about where it was full term. You don't have to wait 8 days. You have a full year, and the year starts from the birth. That explains, because I think we must have had cases where you can slaughter it right away or something, and that would be because you knew it was full term. Okay. What we've been having lately in Masechta Rosh Hashanah was that every daf we're given like one big brisa. We spend the rest of the daf explaining it. That's basically been the story here. We start again now. Yeah. Taner Rabbanan, start in a brisa. Be'echad b'Nisan, Rosh Hashanah l'chadashim. First of Nisan is the Rosh Hashanah for months. Oh, the Mishnah didn't tell that to me. The Mishnah told me that Nisan has two significance: Malachim and Regalim. Nisan, the month of Nisan, is Hashanah for kings and for holidays. We explained the kings was for documents, and the holidays was for Bal Ta'acha, that you can't delay your sacrifices. According to Reb Shimon, that whole thing need to be in order. Brisa adds in L'chadashim. It's also the first of the months. Like we know that you count the months, 1, 2, 3. The first month, the second month starts in Nisan. Li'iburim. We're thinking now that if you want to make a leap year, that's going to be done in Nisan. That's what we're thinking. Leap years at the end of the year. All right, let's see. L'chumas shkalim. And also for the taking of the new shkalim that came in, everyone would donate in Adar, the shkalim. You would start to separate baskets of those shkalim to be able to buy the new sacrifices. That would be in Nisan. The Yesh Aimrim, and there's another opinion. Af l'schiras batim, also for renting a house. Someone rents a house, he says, I'm renting it for a year. So, okay, the year's up. Now I can rent it to someone else, or maybe I can move out without any terms or whatever. So, okay, we were introduced to some new concepts of Nisan in this brisa. Gemara starts off, L'chadashim min alan. How do you know it's the first of the month? This is sort of like these questions, like, and who says? And then when you give an answer, it says, and who says? And then you give another answer, it says, and who says? So, you see. How do you know that Nisan is the first of the month? We're going to quote a pasuk. This month is the first month. It's the first for you of the months of the year. Dabril kaladas Yisrael leimar. Speak to the Jewish people, saying, on the 10th of this month. They'll take a man a sheep for his house, for his father's house, a sheep for the house. It'll be watched till the 14th day of this month, and you'll slaughter it, etc. Uksiv. Now we have another pasuk. We don't know what month that is. It just says this month is the first month, but we have no reference to which month. You should guard How do you translate Aviv? The spring. Aviv means when the fruits, when the grain is ripening. Okay. Ezo Chodesh Yesh B'Ibav or Aviv. Which month is when you have this spring? It says Habiyomer Zenisan. Okay. B'Karei Rishon. So we figured out. You know what's going on? We have a pasuk that we know, so we're so familiar with, that Nisan is the month that Pesach happened in. It's Korban Pesach and all of this, but we don't know because it didn't tell me the name of the month. It just says the first month, but you don't know which month is it. So we have another source. The other source tells me that it's the time when the grain, right? You need a natural reference to be able to figure things out. Something, or else you oh, because it says Shmar Chedesh Aviv Vasisa Pesach. So that month that we said that you should do the Pesach, which was the first month, should be in the month of Aviv. And since the grain ripens in Aviv, that's Aviv means the grain ripens. So we got figured out that must be Nisan. We're jumping from, so we know when the grain ripens. That's a natural occurrence. Now, I know that Pesach is going to be when the grain ripens. But Shmar Chedesh Aviv, the pasuk continues, which is important. Basisa Pesach. Now I have another verse that says the first month you should do Pesach, and here I have another one that says when the grain ripens you should do Pesach. So I say, oh, grain ripens first month must be Nisan is the first month. No, it's just coming to tell me that it's Nisan. Right. All right, but then we have to adjust it to get it back. Yeah, we're gonna ask that in a moment.
Yeah, it's a little funny. We don't know that Pesach is in Nisan.
Right. Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
We're so familiar with this that we're like, how can you even ask the question? But the Gemara is doing like a who said, how do you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like a devil's advocate. You can keep asking, like, who told you that that's but we have no reference unless you have a natural occurrence that you can refer it to, that you can. So the Gemara says, Ve'ima iyar, the grain is still ripening in iyar. So it says, Be'ina aviv veleka. Well, it's finished. Really, it's really finished in it's already ripened in Nisan. Sometimes there's a later grain that doesn't ripen, but that's not the main thing. Ve'ima adar, but there's the early grain, ripens early. No, be'ina roiv aviv veleka. You need most of the grain to ripen, and you don't have it. Gemara says, whoa, you just made something up. Midi roiv aviv ksiv. It doesn't say most of the grain. It just says ripen. It just says aviv. Yeah, you can't make things up. So elam Rav Chisda mehacha. We need another source. Unbelievable. We don't have a source that Pesach is in Nisan. It says ach b'chamisha asiyim lachedesh hashvi bas b'chem estfos haaretz. On the 15th day of the month, of the 7th month, when you gather in the grain, ezo chodesh yesh be'asifa. Which month do you gather? Tishrei. You gathered in Tishrei, and you said that it's the 7th month. Aha! You gather in the 7th month. So that must mean that it's the 7th month from what? We'll count back and it will be Nisan. Maybe it's Mar Cheshvan. And it's the 7th month to Iyar. We said that it could be that there's still grain that's ripening in Iyar. I mean, most of it has ripened in Nisan, but there could be some late grain that's ripening in Iyar. He said, Bina Asif, Veleka. No, in Mar Cheshvan, you don't gather in anymore. You have already finished the gathering in Tishrei. Ve'ema Elul, maybe it's Elul. And Omai Shvi Shvi Adar, and it's the 7th month to Adar. We said that there was grain that ripened early in Adar. You need most of the grain to ripen. You don't have most of the grain. It says Chedesh Aviv. Going back to our problem before, the Gemara says Midi Raiv Asif. I'm sorry, I jumped back to the other one. But in Raiv Asif Aleka, you need to be able to bring in most of the grain to gather. And it says Midi Raiv Asif Ksiv. Does it say you have to gather most of the grain? We're talking about now in Elul. In other words, Tishrei is most of the grain. There may be some early grain that you can gather in Elul, and we'll start from. So we don't have a source really, because we have the 3 months that there's potential for it to be. Elam Ravina says, you know what? We actually don't know this from the Torah. We only know this from the prophets. The prophets, the later prophets, they already had names of months because they came back from Bavel. So from the later prophets, we can get the names. Yeah. It says Yomi Esrim Varba. It says in Zechariah, see, we have a reference here. It's the 24th day of the 11th month. That's Shvat. Okay, that's a good source. What are you looking for? Ravina? Ravina is the end of. Oh, make the calendar.
Yeah, one of the confusing parts of the discussion last week. I'm never sure what period it's talking about. Because so many different ways of counting at different times. And I'm trying to
mean
figure out why this problem still existed after Hillel made the calendar. They must be saying back before he made the calendar.
You're asking about when we were counting by the king. Why do we have to use the king? Hillel made a calendar that had let's assume that he had numbers in that calendar.
Calendar of stars.
Right. Right.
And say for all on
Right. Right. I think the Gemara is going to mention Minyan Shtaris. Yeah, that was around. That was for sure around. Minyan Shtaris was from Alexander. Okay, so now we're just discussing, do we really know which month is the first month? So we figured it out from a pasuk in Zechariah. Rabba bar Ula Amar Mehacha Vatilakach Esther ala Melech Achashverosh shel Beis Malchusai b'Chodesh Asiri u'Chodesh Teves. See, we're going to need a source that tells me 2 names, a number and a name. Give me a number and a name, then I can match it up. So it says the 10th month, which is Teves. We're getting closer to Nisan. We're moving our way back. Rav Kana Amar Mehacha. Rav Kana has another source. It says Barba Chodesh Tishrei b'Kislev. It's in the 4th of the 9th month in Kislev. Another pasuk in Zechariah. We're getting closer. We had Shvat, Teves, and Kislev, working our way back. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar Mehacha. Vayikru Sefer HaMelech Beisi b'Chodesh HaShlishi u'Chodesh Sivan. Oh, we're really close now. The scribes of the king were called then in the 3rd month, in the month of Sivan. Rav Ashi Amar Mehacha. Ipilpur hu agar lefnei Haman miyom liyom mechedesh lechedesh neimaser u'chedesh Adar. The 12th month, they drew lots, a lot from the Megillah here. They drew lots, and it fell in the 12th month, in the month of Adar. Okay, that should tell me that it's the 12th month from Nisan. Another pshat is b'chedesh harishon u'chedesh Nisan. In the 1st month, which is the month of Nisan. Now, that is way too direct to give any other answer. I mean, you just told me Nisan itself. You don't even have to count. It's the exact one we were looking for, right? So the Gemara asks, How come all these other rabbis, Rabbi Barula and Ravina and Rav Kana and Rav Bar Yaakov and Rav Ashi, why didn't they bring that most direct answer? It says Dilma my Rishon Lemilse. Maybe Rishon means it's the first month off when he did the lottery. Did he do the lottery in Adar? Maybe I think it says he did the lottery and people poor who are Gerol. Yeah, who Chedesh Adar. He did the lottery in Adar. So this would be 1 month. Chedesh Rishon, that would be the first month from his lottery. How do you know it's the first month of the year? Okay, Betana Didan. Now we go back to, okay, we have our source. Sources. So we really need all of those other psukim to tell me that Nisan is the first month. Yeah, that's an amazing piece of Gemara here. No one's ever going to ask you. How do you know Nisan is when it says Chedesh Rishon, Chedesh Zelachem Rosh? How do you know it's Nisan? It's already so accepted that no one challenges that. But our Gemara challenged it. We had to find sources. Yeah. Okay. But now we go back to say, why didn't our Tana in the Mishnah discuss what's so significant about Nisan? It's a Rosh Hashanah L'Chadashim. We didn't say that. So it says, we're not talking about in the month, in the year itself. We're talking about just years. That it's the Rosh Hashanah for the year, not for months in the year. We're not talking about months. Okay. Next quote from the Brisa that added in some details that we didn't have in the Mishnah regarding the month of Nisan. It says a liburin, when it comes, it's also, Nisan is the Rosh Hashanah for leap years. Liburin mi Nisan maninan. You can make a leap year. You start making the leap year from Nisan. They can't make a leap year in Nisan. It's the beginning of the year. They have to wait till Batanya. We have a Brisa. Ein ma'aber Nashana fnei Rosh Hashanah. You have to wait at least 6 months before you can make it into a leap. You have to see what's going on. You know, there's reasons to make the leap year, the season, and sometimes there was even communal reasons. If there wasn't enough, if people couldn't get to the Beis Hamikdash or something, there were reasons other reasons other than just the season. But whatever the case is, they had to wait till Rosh Hashanah. And even if they make a leap year so early, it doesn't help. But you could do it right after Rosh Hashanah if it's a time of distress. There's a concern, Rashi quotes, that maybe they won't allow the Bezdin to sit. Or maybe the head of the court is going to need to leave. And they won't be able to do it without the head of the court. The Nasi needs to be there. Whatever the case is, the only month that they can make a double of is Adar. Okay. Does it mean Ein Ma'aber Mela Adar? It doesn't mean that they usually only do it in Adar. Either way. Okay, whatever the case is, the Gemara has a question here. That what are you telling me that Nisan is a Rosh Hashanah for leap years? It can't be. It doesn't even work. Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, "My Iburin." What does it mean? It's a Rosh Hashanah for leap years. Hafsaka Sipurim, that it's too late to make a leap year. Once Nisan starts, you can't then decide. You see, you have 12 months in the year. Adar is the last month. If you want to make a leap year, then you add a second Adar. Let's say your Nisan started, and you say, "Oh, we should have made a leap year." This, instead of calling it Nisan, let's call it Adar. Because no, it's too late. Once Rosh Chodesh Nisan begins, you can't turn that Nisan into an Adar.
There was a king who did that, right?
Oh yeah.
Uziel.
Yeah, but what he did
He was
was
punished for that.
he did it by first he turned Adar into a leap month by giving it an extra day, and then he did it during Adar, which was also a problem. But there was a loophole in that to be able to do it. Yeah.
So he's saying he's making a leap year during Adar. He says, okay, now we should add another month. Is that what he's saying?
No, yeah, during Adar we can add another month. Once Nisan starts, you can't say that, you know what, this is just another Adar Sheni. We'll have Purim again.
How did they not know that? What sense you said they don't realize, oh, the weather's wrong or something?
Yeah, there were secondary reasons also to make a leap year. People couldn't get to the base of Mikdash on time or something for whatever reason. So we said, let's push it off. Let's push off Pesach. We'll give everyone some more time. Right. Okay. The Tanan hayu hein hayidu shemaber mashana kol adar sheyayim ramada purim. Hein hayidu is the two rabbis, Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Papis, which we had yesterday or on Friday. Remember, they testified about the Vlad Shlamim that was brought on Sukkot or possibly on a Shavuos. So they testified that you could make a leap year the entire month of Adar, because some people said that it can only be done before Purim. They said no. My time of the mandam are the Purim. What's the reason for those that said it can only be until Purim? Because it was taught Shailim Hilchas Pesach Kedon Pesach Shleishim Yaim, that you start learning the laws of Pesach 30 days before Pesach. They already started learning about Hilchas Pesach 2 weeks ago. If you're now going to extend the year, that means instead of Pesach coming in another 2 weeks, it's going to come in a month and 2 weeks. So if it's possible that the people are already have their plans set for Pesach, they won't listen to the Shluchi Bezdin that come. Say, I don't care what you say. I already took out my Pesach dishes or something. That's what it sounds like. Okay. And V'idach made the Yediyah, it could be they started to prepare food or something and they don't want to accept it. The other opinion holds that made the Yediyah the Shatama Barta, B'chushban Natalia Milsa. No, there's no problem. You can extend it. Everyone knows that it has to do with calculations. And they didn't finish the calculations until now. There's no reason why not to accept it. Sometimes calculations take time, and now they got it. Okay, why didn't we mention that there's an end time to making a leap year in the Mishnah? The Mishnah, we just said two things. It's Rosh Hashanah l'regalim and l'malachim. Here we have another Rosh Hashanah that you can't make a leap year. We weren't saying end times, we were saying start times. When does the year start? Not when does the year end? This is the end of the year. I know automatically it means when it starts also, but it actually doesn't really start there because you can't start the leap year until Rosh Hashanah. And this is really just an end time. Okay, now the third thing that we said in the Brisa, that Nisan is the Rosh Hashanah for Truma Shkalim. That when you start to use the new coins. Minal, and where do you know this from? Amar Rabbi Yosha Makra. We have a pasuk. Zeis Eilas Chedesh B'Chadshei L'Chadshei Hashana. This is the sacrifice of the month to the months of the year. Amra Torah, the Torah says Chedesh B'Chadshei means the Rosh Chodesh sacrifice. Chodesh v'havei karban mitruma chadasha. The month that you bring the sacrifices from the new coins, to spend the new money on the sacrifices. The Gamri We had this in Shkalim, probably. Shana mi Nisan. How do you know it's Nisan? So we learn Gzeir Shabbat. The Ksiv Rishonu lachem l'Chadshei Hashana. It's the first month of Chadshei Hashana. You see, it says Shana. So it also says, so we have Shana in the pasuk of Nisan. We have Shana in the pasuk of using the new coins. Well, which we learned the new coins, sorry. So that tells me that it's Nisan. If you're just looking for the word Shana, I have Shana by Tishrei as well. The Ksiv Meireshus Hashana, Badachar Shana. In the beginning of the year to the end, that's talking about Tishrei. It says, done in Shana Sheishim HaChadashim, Mishana Sheishim HaChadashim. Vein done in Shana Sheishim HaChadashim, Mishana Sheinim HaChadashim. We're looking for a year that's associated with the months, or maybe a pasuk that has the word month in it. So it says, Chaydesh b'chadshei l'chadshei Hashana, and then it says, Rishon hu lachem l'chadshei Hashana, and you're quoting to me a pasuk that just says Reishish Hashana. It doesn't say the word Chaydesh in it. I'm looking for Chaydesh and Shana. Okay. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says in his name of his teacher Shmuel, Karbanis Tzibur, Habayim Bechad B'Nisan, communal sacrifices that come on the 1st of Nisan, Mitzvah Lahavi Menachadash. You have to bring it from the new coins. If you happen to use the old coins, Yatza, you're Yaitza L'Shechisa Mitzvah. But you're lacking in the mitzvah. There's a mitzvah to use the new coins. Tanya Nami Hachi. What Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel is actually happens to be a brisa. Karbanis Tzibar Habayim Bechad B'Nisan. The sacrifices that are brought on the 1st of Nisan, Mitzvah Lavi Menachad, there's only one day into the year. You're supposed to bring it from the new coins. If you brought the old coins, it's still a good sacrifice, but you neglected a mitzvah. The Yachid says Nadav Mishalai. Yeah. What happened was they collected coins in Adar, and then the collection. They had it all in the temple, and then on the 1st of Nisan, or maybe like 4 days before or something, they would prepare it. They would get the coins. They would take it out to buy the new sacrifices with the new money. Right. The idea here was that the sacrifices are brought on behalf of the Jewish people, and there was a new collection every year. When you brought a sacrifice, everyone had contributed to that. So it was done every year. It would be like a new contribution, and then the sacrifice was on behalf of everyone that contributed. The Yachid Shes Nadiv Mishalai. Let's say there's an individual that wants to donate for the communal sacrifices, besides for the shkalim. He sends a sacrifice. Are they allowed to use it? Ksherim, that's kosher. As long as he gives it over to the community, that it's not his personal sacrifice, it's the community. The Gemara says Pshita. It understands that this should be obvious. It says, well, maybe he doesn't give it over wholeheartedly. Maybe he wants it still to be his. He's claiming like 99% of that sacrifice. So Kamash Malan, that it's acceptable. He gave it to the community. It's fine. Betana Didan, we go back to the question we ask every time we have something new that was added in the Brisa. What happened to the Tana of our Mishnah? Why didn't he mention Shumash Shkalim? It says, Kivin Diktanim, Hevi Yatza Lepsikale. It says, well, it's only Lachatchila. If you use the old coins, you were Yaitza. The Brisa doesn't want, the Mishnah doesn't want to get into that. Wants to only say things that's 100%, that it's all over, or it all starts, rather, by Nisan. Yeah.
Way back we had learned that we would send coins in the
3 baskets.
Yeah. I think the oldest was technically looking.
Yeah. The ones that came in first were taken out first.
You just said the newest ones.
No, well, the new for this year. The new coins from this year. In other words, we're not using the old baskets, last year's baskets. We're using this. Yeah. And then we covered over with a cloth, and then they were the late ones. Some say that it's the new year also for housing, renting houses. Tan Rabbanan, started in a brisa. A masker bias lachaveirei l'shana. Someone rents a house to his friend for a year. Okay. You count 12 months from day to day. That means that you have, I don't know if it's 365 or 354. 12 months sounds like 354. Okay. But if you start on, what's today, Yud Aleph Cheshvan? You start Yud Aleph Cheshvan, you go until, Yud Cheshvan next year. That would be the end. V'mamar l'shana zu. If he says, I want to rent it for this year, he doesn't say for a year. He says, I want to rent it for this year. Very interesting. It's the first of Adar. Says, I want to rent it for this year. The year ends by Nisan. Gets 1 month out of this.
If you rented it for a year, it started another.
Yeah.
It's 4.
Right? But if he rents it for this year and he starts in Adar, then this year is over by Nisan and he gets 1 month. If he says a year, then he gets 12 months. A year, yeah. I suppose. Right. Our discussion we had about, is it a hour or an hour? That's an interesting one. Depends how you spell it or how you say it. Okay. So Vafilo, now there's a little bit of a question over here because we've mentioned before that even 1 day is considered a year. And in the Brisa, we just said that 30 days would be considered the year. And the example that it gave was Be'echad Ba'adar, okay, the year's up, 30 days later, Adar, I think it's 29 days, but 30 days later, 1 month later in Nisan, right? Okay. What about that other opinion that holds that 1 day of the year is considered a year? It says, well, Shani Hacha, this is different. Like Tarachinish Lamegar Basil Abatsim Mitlas in Yemen. No one's going to want to move into a place. It's impossible that he meant that he's moving in for less than 30 days. It's a hassle, right?
Before Airbnb.
Before, yeah, right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. The same concept, the Uber and the Airbnb is the same concept where everyone is servicing, whether that was your job or not. You walk outside, every single car is potentially your driver. You walk down the block, every single house is potentially your hotel. It's interesting. Okay. So, Ve'ima Tishrei, well, where do you get this from? That it's Nisan. You see, very nice. There's a month. A month could be a year, could be the whole year. Nice, but who tells you this? We're not like asking for a pasuk because this is rabbinic law. It's sort of like based on not based on, it's based on like a social contract, like what we would like to happen. It's not based on psukim. So maybe Tishrei, so maybe Tishrei should be the month. Why are you telling me it's Nisan? So it says Stam probably you wanted it for the rainy season. No one would want to have to leave the house in the middle of the rain, in the middle of the rainy season, and be homeless. They use the outdoors a lot more than we did. So someone could stay in a courtyard. The courtyard was where people did all their things. The house was just like for the bed, for privacy. But the courtyard was everything. The stove was outside. They ate outside. The courtyard was a big deal. They built their houses differently, of course. Like the way you would build houses when you didn't have air conditioning, you would build it differently. So that no one wanted to be outside during the rainy season. So we say it would rain the whole winter. So it had to be Nisan when the winter was over, that would be where he would say, okay, the year's up. Vitana Kama, the Brisa, Vitana Didan. notice that this is a yesh imrim. There are those that say that it's also someone renting a house. And we also have the author of the Mishnah that never mentioned this. So we have the first opinion of the Brisa that doesn't mention this. We have the opinion of the Mishnah that doesn't mention this, that this is something that happens in Nisan. What did they hold? So it says, why didn't they mention that this should be like the New Year's? It says, well, B'Nisan Nami Mishkach Shchiach Kitri. It's very possible that it rains in Nisan as well. They wouldn't want to be out in Nisan. They actually don't hold of this. They don't hold that Nisan is the beginning. They would hold that Iyar would be the beginning, or maybe. If that's the case, so why don't we have 5 Rosh Hashanahs? I'm not sure about that. Okay. Now we go back to what we said in the Mishnah. We're done with the Brisa, and we go to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, it's the first Mishnah of the Masechta. It's 4 Rosh Hashanahs. First one was Nisan. Rosh Hashanah l'malachim l'regalim. The second one is Bechad be'elul. It's Rosh Hashanah l'maisa behema. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, and Bechad b'tishrei. So there's a machlekes about this second one. It's either, we're talking about maisa behema, tithing the animals. We're talking about that the animals would be born by then. That's going to be the discussion here. But there's a machlekes if it's elul or tishrei. It's going to be associated with when the animals mate because they have five months of gestation. Okay, so Be'echad Be'el Rosh Hashanah l'maisa behema. The first of El is Rosh Hashanah for Maisa behema. We ask Mani, whose opinion is this? We say Reb Meir. It's the opinion of Reb Meir. Because we have a brisa, it's actually a Mishnah. Reb Meir Reimer Be'echad Be'el Rosh Hashanah l'maisa behema. Okay. So we have a Tanakama. Who's the Tanakama of the Mishnah? It's Reb Meir. We quoted that from another Mishnah. And the Gemara now asks, Ulu regalim mani. Who was the beginning of the Mishnah? We said that Nisan was Rosh Hashanah for regalim. So we had 5 opinions earlier in the Masechta. We had the opinion of the Tanakama, and we had the opinion of Reb Shimon, we had Reb Elazar ben Yaakov, and we had Reb Meir, and we had Reb Elazar bar Shimon. All different opinions about the order of the holidays. And it was only Reb Shimon that held that the way someone violates Baal Ta'achar is delaying, bringing the sacrifice, is if he starts on Pesach, or the vow was taken before Pesach, and he goes through a Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, that's the violation. Okay, so which opinion was that? That was Reb Shimon. So the beginning of the Mishnah is Reb Shimon. The second case of the Mishnah is Reb Meir. Now let's go a little further. Reb Shimon, Ema Seifa. Let's read further in the Mishnah. Doesn't mean the end, it just means the end of this case. Rabbi Elazar, Reb Shimon, and Bechad b'Tishrei. Rabbi Elazar, and Reb Shimon say Bechad b'Tishrei. Rabbi Elazar is Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. He's a friend of Reb Shimon bar Yochai, student of Rabbi Akiva. They both say, everyone here is the student. Reb Meir is a student. Rabbi Elazar, Reb Shimon. So they say it's Tishrei. So the Gemara asks, Reisha v'Sefer Reb Shimon Mitzias Reb Meir. You don't have, the Mishnah is not consistent. The beginning is Reb Shimon, the end is Reb Shimon, and the middle is Reb Meir. It says, Amar Reb Yosef. Reb Yosef says, don't worry about that. Rebbe, it really is consistent. It's all the opinion of Rebbe. And he holds, according to Reb Shimon for this, he holds like Reb Shimon for that, he holds Reb Meir for this, but it's all consistent, Rebbe's opinion. And then he mentions Reb Shimon's opinion afterwards. Okay. What happens now is that we had an issue before that we ignored. We said, what really is the Rosh Hashanah for Regalim? It's not really Echad B'Nisan. It's really Pesach. It's really the 15th, because it starts with Pesach. The holidays start with Pesach, so we said, oh, well, it's a month that has Pesach in it, but it's really Pesach. So according to Reb Shimon, we have actually another Rosh Hashanah. We have the 1st of Nisan is Rosh Hashanah for the kings. And we have the 15th of Nisan, which is the Rosh Hashanah of the Regalim. Now, Reb Meir doesn't have that Rosh Hashanah, because Reb Meir's opinion was that you violate Baal Ta'achar once one holiday approaches and you don't bring it. Meir learned that once you have the positive command, you have the negative command, you have the negative prohibition. So according to Reb Shimon, the Gemara now asks, Ihachi arba chamisha havu. You actually have 5 Rosh Hashanahs. You have Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, 15th of Nisan. You have, let's take Reb Shimon. Well, let's take Reb. I'm not sure if you follow. If you follow Reb Shimon himself, you may only be left with 4. If you follow Reb Meir himself, you may be left with 4. Reb Meir doesn't have regalim, so we're good. If you follow Reb Shimon puts, he doesn't have a echad be'el. Shimon only has a echad b'tishrei. So each one of those opinions independently are fine, they're safe. But when you take Rebbe's opinion that he's collecting from different sources, it's a problem because we said it's Rebbe. He ends up with 5. So it goes like this. Look at this Gemara. Amar Rava, arba l'divrei hakol. There's 4 according to everyone. L'Reb Meir arba. Reb Meir gets 4 because dal regalim. You drop, dal is delete. You delete the regalim. He doesn't have the holidays because he says that there's a violation of just one holiday. He doesn't have the 3 holidays, a year of holidays. Reb Shimon arba. Reb Shimon also has 4 because dal ma'aser behema. Ma'aser behema is on the 1st of Tishrei, which is anyways Rosh Hashanah for other things. Okay, so that's a way out of this, even though Rebbe is the one that's quoting this, but what the Mishnah means is that for each one of those opinions independently is only 4. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, see, it's amazing, you read the Mishnah, if you read it with, I didn't look up the Bartanura, but the Bartanura would sometimes tell you like how the Gemara learns it, and this would be a very complicated Mishnah if you want to read it now. According to the following opinions, you can come out with only 4 Rosh Hashanahs, but let's go through this. This one doesn't hold of this, and this one doesn't hold of that. Yeah. So when they tell you, yeah, that's Reb Meir's opinion. Reb Shimon's opinion is that it's Tishrei. Very good. Very good. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, Arba chadashim ubehem kama Rosh Hashanah. Nachman bar Yitzchak says, you added in a holiday. A Rosh Hashanah, the 15th of Nisan, but that's not what the Mishnah meant. The Mishnah meant there's 4 months that each have Rosh Hashanahs in it. So there's Nisan that has a Rosh Hashanah in it, 2 actually. There's Elul, there's Tishrei, and there's Shvat. And Shvat is a machlekes, right? Right. Okay, Meisvei. Gemara has a question. Shisha b'Nisan Rosh Hashanah la'Imer. The 16th of Nisan is the Rosh Hashanah for the Aimer. It means after the 16th, or after the Aimer is brought, actually, or the end of the 16th, end of the day. Remember, Yomi we had a Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai that instituted that or something. You're allowed to eat the new grain. Those people in Chutz La'aretz, there's a discussion about this in Eretz Yisrael. It's a biblical law. You can't eat the new grain. You can't eat the new grain. You have to use up the old grain. Not just use up the old grain, but whether you used it up or not, the new grain becomes permitted after the Aimer is brought. So when is that? That is Shisha Asar b'Nisan, the 16th of Nisan. So far, we don't really have a problem with adding in another Rosh Hashanah, especially according to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, because he says, well, if you have another Rosh Hashanah in the same month, it goes under the same category. All right, but problems are coming. Shisha b'Sivan Rosh Hashanah l'shtei alechem. This means that you're allowed to bring sacrifices starting from Shavuos, from the new grain. It wasn't ever brought the new wheat wasn't brought into the temple until the new barley was brought on the Omer, but the new wheat wasn't brought until Shavuos. So that's another Rosh Hashanah. The problem is that it's another month also, it's Sivan. And if you want to count months, so why don't we put it in there? Or even if you're not counting months, it should, what happened to this Rosh Hashanah? L'Rava Lisnei Shisha. Remember, Rava was the one that said that we're following each opinion independently. Reb Meir's opinion, there's only 4. Reb Shimon opinion, only 4. Well, over here, there's 4 plus 2. You should have 6. The Rav Nachman Yitzchak Lisnei Chamisha. According to Rav Nachman Yitzchak, I get it. We're not going to add the Nisan one because he holds that if anything that's in that month gets included in that one. But I still have a Sivan one. I should have 5 Rosh Hashanahs. Amarav Papa. Papa says, these are sacrifices. The 2 things that we just introduced are sacrifices that are brought by day. We're looking for Rosh Hashanahs that start at night. Okay. What about the holiday? The holidays? You can only bring those sacrifices in the morning. You can't bring them at night. So that really starts in the morning. That's when they're eligible to be brought. The Gemara answers, given the tzarich lasuye miikara mechayev. Since you have to bring them before, so it's counted from the evening before. All right. So we're really looking for holidays that are a regular Jewish holiday that start in the evening. Mechayev v'koy. That's what it's supposed to read it. Given the Shitzak, let's see Mikara or Mikara Mechayev v'koy. Let's see how it's quoted over here. Yeah, Mikara Mechayev v'koy. You have to bring it Erev HaRegel. Okay. For a Yoivlois, what about Yovel? One of this was Yovel, right? Yovel we said was Rosh Hashanah. We said that was the Rosh Hashanah for Yovelis, Rosh Hashanah, Echad B'Tishrei, Shmitin and Yovelis and Shanim and Netiyah. What happens when Yovel? They blow the shofar. So they do that by day. But Yovelis lechayel mi or tevekachashiv. You can, and we count it. It says, well, we answer like this: Rabbi Shmuel b'nei Shor Rabbi Yechim bebreki dam Rosh Hashanah chayel Yovel. There's different opinions when Yovel is effective. When the land goes back, is it from the blowing of the shofar or is it from Rosh Hashanah? According to the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel b'nei Shor Rabbi Yechim bebreki, it starts from Rosh Hashanah, which means that it could start at night. So it goes back by night. So okay, that's why that's going to fit. Rav Shisha Breder Ravina Makika Chashav Midid Lai Tali B'Maisa. Midid the Tali B'Maisa like a Chashav. Oh, this is an interesting one. It's a good answer. We're looking for Rosh Hashanahs that just happen. We're not looking for Rosh Hashanahs that you had to do something to make it happen. You had to bring the Karban, you had to bring the Shtei Halechem, right? That's what you want me to count, but those are things that are services, things that are done. Gemara says 1 second. Very regalim midid the Tali B'Maisa v'Kachashav. What does it mean? Regalim is midid the Tali B'Maisa, the holiday. What it means is that I can't bring my sacrifice until after the Karban Tamid is brought. I can only bring it after there's a time restriction that I can only bring it after the Karban Tamid. So when would the counting of the holidays begin? It would begin after the Karban Tamid. Okay, it's Tali B'Maisa. I had to do an action for this counting to start. So it says Balta Acher Memela Chayil. Turns out that I know you can only practically bring it from then, but regarding the Balta Acher, that's not how it works. Balta Acher starts with the holiday beginning. That starts your count. Okay. What about Yoivlois? We asked this question once before.
Times when they bring the Korban Pesach, is a holiday starting with the Korban Pesach?
So that's interesting because there's 2 holidays on Pesach. One is called the holiday of Pesach, and that's on the 14th of Nisan. It was brought, the Korban Pesach was brought in the afternoon. And then there's Chag HaMatzos, and that's the 15th, which starts at night. Yeah, that's from the text. That's from the when you read it in the text, that's what it is. From Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, he says that we call it Chag HaMatzos. Whatever, the Eibishter calls it Pesach. No, we call it Pesach. We call it Pesach. The Eibishter calls it Chag HaMatzos. Because we're talking about what the Eibishter did for us. That he jumped over, he saved us, he jumped over the houses. And the Eibishter says Chag HaMatzos because he went into the desert without any food, just out of Lech Decha Acharei Bamidbar. But if you look at the text, it's actually 2 separate days. You can still say the Pshat. Okay. So
Rosh Hashanah, the Shtei Alechem, the one that's in Sivan, that's not something that's applicable to anybody except for the temple.
Right.
So, that's
anyone that would bring a sacrifice to the Beis Hamikdash, they would bring their flour. Well, actually, they would probably buy it from the Beis Hamikdash. But whatever the case is, that flour would be new flour from then on. That was relevant. Okay. Yovel is Tali b'Maisa because they blow the shofar. We answered this question already. Rabbi Shmuel b'nai shel Rabbi Yechon ben Breika. It's the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel b'nai shel Rabbi Yechon ben Breika that holds that it's from Rosh Hashanah. It's not from the blowing of the shofar, which is, I think, on Yom Kippur actually. Rav Ashi Amar. Rav Ashi says, Arba Rosh Hashanim heim, Shem ba'arba Rosh Chadashim. You know what? You're right. We have other Rosh Hashanahs, but that's not what our mission is talking about. We're looking for Rosh Hashanahs that start on the 1st of the month, which we have. We have Nisan, Elul or Tishrei. That's 1 or 2, whatever. Let's say, and then we have Shvat. What about Regalim, and what about Regalim is a problem. We're going to go back to what Rav Chizda said. We didn't really mean that it's Rosh Hashanah Regalim. We really meant that it's a month that has a Regalim in it. Okay. The Gemara asks, Bechad b'Shvat ke Beishamai? So the whole Mishnah was just teaching me Beishamai because Bechad b'Shvat. Beis Hillel holds that 2 b'Shvat is Rosh Hashanah Le'ilanis, not Echad b'Shvat. And yet now Rav Ashi is telling me that I'm only counting the 1st of the month. It says Hachi Kamar. Shleisha l'divrei hakol. 3 of them are everyone. And Bechad b'Shvat is a machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Okay. We didn't really mean to say that we're following Beis Shammai. We're just we're saying that there is a Beis Shammai there that holds up. Okay. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, I'm Bechad b'Tishrei. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say that it's on the 1st of Tishrei. We're talking about Meiser Behema, that when you tie, you see, I need 10 animals to take one off to be the tithe, and it's brought as a sacrifice. They walk through a fence and it becomes a carbon. So let's say I have 10 animals, but it's combined, 9 of them are from this year and 1 of them is from after Tishrei. It was just born right after Tishrei. Well, that's not counted as having 10. That's counting as having 9. I guess it's like the $600 for taxes. Is it like if you make $600? Well, you made $599. Then you made another $1 January 1st. It doesn't add up. And also, there's another issue is that you can't take the tithe from one group and another group. So there is a cutoff point. Oh, very good.
No one's born anyways.
Right.
Well, actually, I think that no one's born in January, but yeah, March, April.
We'll see. That's it. The Gemara is going to discuss that.
No one's born in Tishrei.
Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Shnei mikra echad darshu." Both opinions here. Now we see both opinions. We're talking about the machlekes. We have a machlekes if it's bechad be'el or bechad b'tishrei. It says Shnema. They're both learning from one pasuk. it's really the opinion of Reb Meir and Reb Shimon. Shenemar, it says, Lovshu Karim Atzain. Different interpretations here, actually, in the Gemara itself. The translation would say that the sheep are enclosed, are dressed in the meadow. But that's not how our Gemara is looking at it. Our Gemara is looking at it is that the sheep are dressed with the male sheep. That means that's the mating season. Va'amakim yatfu bar, and the valleys are crowned with grain. Yisrael, they make trumpet sounds. Af Yashira, they even sing. It's talking about how the wind goes through the grain, it rustles through the grain. That's what's going on at this time. Reb Meir Savar, Emasai Lavshu Karim Atzain. When is the mating season of the sheep? Bisman Sha'amakim Yatfu Bar. When there's grain in the valley. Ve'emasai Amakim Yatfu Bar. When is there grain in the valley? Ba'adar. It's in Adar. There's grain already there. No, it doesn't actually ripen fully, but the grain is already there. Misabres ba'adar v'yoldis ba'av. We know that from the Gemara B'chairos. Remember the gestation, the whole conversation with the elders of Athens, gestation periods of the different animals. We know that this for sheep it's 5 months. So it's I guess Adar, Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, and they give birth in Av. Maybe we just count Nisan, Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, and that's when they give birth.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, 1 second.
We were trying to solve for issue about how big the sheep were.
Oh, we had it in Psachim also. Okay. So Rosh Hashanah Shalem is Elul. So once they're all born in Av, then Rosh Hashanah would be Elul. So they're born in what is that? August, September. Rabbi Lazar, Reb Shimon, Emasai Lavshu Karim Atzain. When do the sheep mate? Bisman Yisro Af Yashiru. That's when it's fully ripened, and that's when you start to get the songs coming through from the wind, because then they're full, and the grain and the husks and all of that, it gives a different sound when it's fully ripe. Emasai Shibalamai Meshira Benisan. That's when the stalks are giving off this song. Misabris Benisan V'Yoldis Be'elul. Okay. They mate in Nisan. 5 months later, Elul, Rosh Hashanah Shalom is Tishrei. Okay. The Gemara asks now, but you see, there's 2 parts to this pasuk. They mate. Yatvuvar. There's the grain, and then there's the song. Someone is ignoring one piece of, one piece of this gets ignored by each Tana. What's the Gemara is asking, like, what do you do with that other part of the pasuk? So it says, what does Reb Meir do with the song? It says, that's talking about those late grain that comes in Nisan. We're not talking about that. Okay. But what about the other opinion that says that the valley is filled with the grain? That means that it would have been in Adar, and it says that's the early grain that comes in Adar. Okay, so each one is ignoring that's not significant. According to Reb Meir, we say the order of the pasuk fits better with Reb Meir, because it says that the sheep mate when the grain is crowned in the valleys. The valleys are crowned with grain. And what about the song? Well, the Kanami Yisra Af Yashira. You see, it depends how you sing this. Yisra Af Yashira. Okay, you have those also.
Rabbi, just while we're on this, we're back in memory when we learned the guy who was sleeping in the cemetery. We heard the conversation about when it'll rain.
Right.
So that's the same thing, right?
That has to do with the rain. He said, is the early rain going to come?
And then
The first rain.
would crack
Oh,
and
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Just saying,
Uh-huh.
reminded me.
Right. El Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon Ipchami Baile. The pasuk should have said it the other way. Where was that? Was that in Beya? Where was the dream?
I don't know, but it was a great story.
Where was the guy that went to the cemetery? Who got his
The guy got kicked out by his wife.
Yeah, his wife kicked him out because he gave money away to someone, and so he went to sleep in the cemetery. It was Rosh Hashanah, and he overheard the brachas yitches. I think
Stuff in the weeds.
it's brachas. It was a Gemara brachas yitches. I think. Yeah. We got to check it out. You have to check it out. I don't know, it just hit me because someone asked me once, and I remember I looked it up. Okay.
50.
You want to check? You want to check it out?
You would mention anything.
Okay. Okay. Hello, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Ipchami Baile. The order of the pasuk should have been the other way. Lav Shukar Matzain. When did the sheep made? Does Manche Yisraf Yashiru? That's when when it sings. And then it should say Vikanami the Amakim Yatzubar. Then another switch around the pasuk. Because the main one is the one where is in Nisan. Elama Rava the Kuliyama Lav Shukar Matzem Bisman Shamakim Yatzubar Ba'adar. Rava says, you know what? Everyone really holds that the mating time is an Adar. We're actually arguing about another pasuk. Aser ta'aser shetai b'shnei meiser sakasim medaber is talking about two ties. Echad meiser beima, echad meiser dagan. You have the animal tie, then you have the you see aser ta'aser. It says twice. There's two different ties. You have the grain tie, then the animal tie. Rameir sever makish meiser beima meiser dagan. That we make a juxtaposition. We look at the juxtaposition of this, the hekish, the comparison. Ma meiser dagan samach legamrei isurei. Just like by the grain, right when it ripens. That's when you take the meiser, right, immediately following the completion of the work of the grain, you take the meiser, af meiser behema samach legamrei isurei. Also meiser behema, right after the it finishes, that's when you take the meiser. So which means like this. They give birth, the grain is completed in Elul, and you take the meiser by Tishrei, right? And then the animals is completed in Av. You take the meiser in Elul or before Elul. It's over by Elul. So what we're saying is that you do it right away. Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Sabri, Rabbi Elazar, and Rabbi Shimon, they hold differently. They hold makish meiser behema meiser dagan. Ma meiser dagan Rosh Hashanah Shlei Tishrei. Of meiser behema Rosh Hashanah Shlei Tishrei. No, it's all Tishrei. Just like meiser dagan, so is meiser behema. Should we try to turn the page? No, we don't have to rush. We're fine. We'll continue tomorrow. Okay.